Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to have you here today. I'm Ivalie Sandino, founder, CEO of Radical Health. And part of what we get to do at Radical Health is we really believe no one should health alone. We know that the healthcare system is lonely, scary, intimidating, and especially in these times, um, this idea of community and what that looks like. So at Radical Health, we use circles and the power of restorative circles of people coming together to connect, to learn from one another, and to navigate the healthcare system. We couple those circles with our online community and trainings and fellowships. And so we are thrilled today to kick off our speaker series where we have brilliant folks coming in to share their wisdom, the lessons and connections that they've learned, and impart that on our community and the ways that we can keep learning from one another, apply skills. And so I am beyond thrilled today to introduce Bobby Stanton, excuse me. I am thrilled to introduce Bobby Stanton III, a visionary consultant, coach, and entrepreneur who has spent over 2 decades helping organizations and individuals discover their power. All of that through values driven strategy. It's interesting because today the world is
Interesting.
interesting.
For sure.
And Bobby's work is really grounded in truth, right? And one truth that really believes that healthy growth stems from within. So his work he doesn't just help people and organizations grow, he really helps them grow in alignment with who they truly are and what they're meant to contribute to the world and really what you're meant to contribute to the world.
Mhm.
So today's session is particularly timely as we navigate this era where the question, what is value, has really become more complex and more critical than ever. Um, Bobby's going to guide us through understanding value. So, not just as a metric that we measure or a metric that maybe investors or stakeholders measure, but really
Come
as
on.
this force that shapes us, right? And how we serve our communities, how we show up as leaders, and how we create lasting impact. So, wherever you're coming from, whether it's as an individual, running a nonprofit, trying to change the world or understand health, or just driving change in your own bubble, your own community. I'm really excited to hear from Bobby today, learn, explore insights, and let's think about how we think about and create value. So, Bobby, thank you again for being
My
here.
pleasure.
We'll kick it over to you and we'll hold some time at the end for Q&A.
Thank you so much for a wonderful introduction. I'm going to pull my screen up here so that you all can see, and then we'll jump right into it. Um, as Evelise already stated, Bobby Staten, I'm super excited to be here. I am going to kick this off with a little bit of energy. I need everybody on the line. I know I can't see you, but I need you to throw your hands in the air because I have a few questions, right? So, my first question for you is this: have you ever pulled together like a creative project or done something that you were really, really excited to share? And when you went live with it or you pushed it out, it kind of flopped. If that's you, just quickly throw your hand up either in the chat or in your Zoom screen. Don't be shy. Come on, let's get the energy moving early. Throw your hands up in the chat. There you go. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Or maybe, and then this is just me just trying to get a feel for the room, right? So I'm curious as to whether you've done something for your community or for your organization, and you're like, hey, I really think this is going to serve this audience well. And you're super excited about it, and then you issue the survey, and everybody's or the responses are kind of varied. They're much different than what you expected. Um, and you're a little disappointed with the results. If that's you, if that's ever happened to you, again, just throw your hands up in the chat or raise your hand online. The reason that I'm asking this question is because I think the thing that I want to focus on today as we talk about value and what that means, it's very important that we ground ourselves in that and use that as the lever by which we really maximize opportunity for the people that we serve. And so, if that is you and you raise your hand in the chat, I like to welcome you because you are in the right place. This is a space where we're going to talk about the different ways that you can meet and reach the needs of your respective stakeholders and or customers, depending on where you sit, in a way that changes not just the impact that you have on them, but also the nature of the relationship. And so today I'm going to introduce you all to a framework that I believe, when applied not only in the professional realm, but also personally, can really transform the way that we relate to one another, and the way that we create impact within the different audiences and circles that we sit in. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. Are you ready? All right. So let me ask you a couple. Here, everybody's familiar with these brands. I'm sure you've seen them before. I want to get some direct feedback from the group, so y'all gonna have to come off of mute. And I didn't say this, but I am. I live in Atlanta. I'm from the South, so you're gonna get some y'alls, might get some ain'ts. This is gonna be a very, very natural conversation. So feel free to take that mask off and know that you're safe in this space. So folks who are coming off mute, um, these brands, how many, I'm sure all of you have heard of them, but how many of you all interact with them on a day-to-day basis? Kai, share with me a little more about your interfaces with these three brands.
I don't use a lot of them on a daily basis. I definitely have from time to time, but I
Hmm.
wouldn't say daily.
Got you. And so when you think about these three brands, what do you think they have in common?
Most of them are uh, tech based and very large companies, kind of the
Sure,
biggest in their space.
sure. Okay. Roxanne, what about you? What do you think these three brands have in common when you look at Airbnb, Uber, Netflix? What's your take? What do you think they have in common?
I've never used Airbnb or Uber. My husband watches Netflix, so I
Okay.
just pay for it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, let me share a little insight with you all. I think all of your answers are absolutely relevant. Um, Airbnb, for those who haven't interfaced with it or just maybe don't know the history of it, they changed hospitality, and transformed the way that we interface with it, making home sharing mainstream. Uber really transformed the way that the transformation transportation industry works through the new concept of ride sharing. Netflix transformed the way that we entertain ourselves, right? The way that we exchange and share and distribute content, creative content, within the marketplace, right? So now making streaming and watching movies at home, for some, really the primary method of consumption. But so transformation is one of the things I think might be the common thread. But the thing that I want to share with you all today is that the one thing that I can say for certain that all three of these brands have in common is that they've mastered value, right? And not only have they mastered value, they've also maximized revenue. If you don't remember anything else, remember this: the business or the organization that masters value maximizes revenue. I'll say that one more time. The business that masters value maximizes revenue. And so the reason that this is important is because, and this, I want to, for those who may be on the line, who may be leaders of nonprofits, that don't necessarily leverage revenue, if you will, as a performance metric. The other thing that you can sub into this is impact. So the business that masters value maximizes impact. So just keep that in your mind for those who are in the nonprofit space. So that begs the question then, what is value, right? Bobby, hey, I hear you, that concept sounds cool, but it's important that we really define what value looks like within the constructs or the context of this construct. And so I'll make it very simple. At a very baseline, value is worth. And when we say worth, we are talking about that through the eyes of our stakeholders or customers, right? What really matters, if we define worth and we double click that, worth is what really matters to our customer. Another way to express this is that value is worth as measured by one, importance, and two, impact to your customer. So when we think about what importance means, It's again, what are the things or what are the outcomes that I place significant value on that I am going to receive or obtain by way of engaging or interacting with your offer, your service, whatever the case may be. Impact is around how is my existence or how am I going to be transformed or changed for the better as a result of our interaction. So importance is really more about alignment with their internal and intrinsic values. Impact is more about the outcomes. So when we think about the definition of value, one of the things that I want to share with you all is that value, we define value as worth as measured by importance and impact to your respective customers. And so when we think about that within the broader thing, we go back to Uber. The thing that I want to ask is, from you all's vantage point, for those who have used Uber, what is important to Uber's customers? Any answers? I'd love to hear from someone. Kai, you want to take a stab at it?
Getting where they need to be and getting there
Okay.
safely.
Getting where they need to be and getting there safely. Ivelisse, what about you? When you think about Uber, what's important to an Uber customer?
We need it quick, fast. I don't want to wait for a taxi, you know.
Yep, speed, convenience, absolutely. All of the things that you all said are absolutely on point. Customers care about convenience, they care about safety, they care about timeliness, and they care about cleanliness, right? Safety. Is this driver the low key, the driver of a creepy white van that's cosplaying as an Uber driver that I need to be suspicious about? Timeliness. How long is it going to take me to get from where I am to where I need to be? I mean, let's be honest now. How many of you all have canceled, your Uber when it shows up and it says you got 12 minutes before they even get to your location? Like, these are the kinds of things that we care about when we're trying to reserve that ride. Cleanliness. I'm looking on the floor mat like I don't know if that's a roach or a squished raisin, right? So, and why is it moving? These are things that, again, a customer might be concerned about when they're looking at Uber or they're trying to figure out or they're trying to arrange that ride. Another thing that's not mentioned here is equality, right? So, for those who live in larger metropolitan areas, you may have or have likely experienced the impact of wanting to get a taxi, wanting to get from A to B, and being shunned because of someone's perception of you, right? And so when you consider those points, and we talk about again what Uber has done to make sure that their customers are cared for and that they have mastered value, these are all things that they've taken into consideration as they design not just the tool and the app, but also the actual customer experience. And so the thing that I want you all to consider here is that the more that you understand about your customers and their needs, the more equipped you are to create value. So what? What does all this mean, Bobby? Great. We get it. Value, schmalue. Why does this matter to me, right? I've never even used Airbnb. I'm just paying for Netflix. Why are we talking about value today? Why does it matter? Here's the reason why. As we've already talked about, the business or the organization that masters value maximizes revenue. But here's the thing, as I've at least kind of mentioned in her intro, we're existing in a very interesting economy and a very existing marketplace. And so, yes, the business that masters value maximizes revenue, but more importantly, for those who are in a competitive landscape, it also mutes the competition. And so when we think about, again, the importance of value and why that's so centered is because, as Mr. Wonderful has said himself time and time again, business is war. We have competitors. Don't let anybody tell you anything different. We will always be managing our competitors in the name of the game. The goal of the game is to win. And so, to the degree that we can, yes, maximize revenue and mute the competition, that is the value proposition for mastering value. Don't believe me? Let's take a look at these numbers, right? Numbers don't lie. This is a snapshot of Uber's income statement, or for those who are not familiar with financial language, this is their profit and loss. How much money did they make over the course of these respective years? The blue line that's above the blue bar that's above the line represents revenue. The gold line at the bottom represents net income. And the numbers that you're seeing here are on an annual basis. I'm just going to read through some of these numbers just to give you all some context because I recognize that the scale may be a little off. In 2021, Uber generated $17.46 billion in revenue. Their gross bookings increased 51% year over year, driven by strong performance in the industry, specifically delivery services. So when you look at the blue bar in 2020, and then you look at the blue bars that follow, in 21 and 22 and in 23, this is what we call in the consulting world and the business world, this is what we call scale. But I'm curious, when you all think about 2020, 2021, can anybody, I'd love to hear an actual voice. Can anybody tell me what was going on in 2021 that might have resulted in a 51% year over year revenue increase specifically tied to delivery services? What was happening?
COVID.
That's right.
Post-COVID.
Yeah, COVID and post-COVID, right? Most of us were in the house trying to figure out how to stay safe, how to keep our family safe, and how to literally survive the pandemic, right? Not just survive it from a health perspective, but survive it economically as well. How do we ensure that we're able to feed our families or get access to the things that we need without any unnecessary exposure to risk and or disease? So when we talk about, again, value, Uber Eats having that piece in place, ready, deployable, already fine-tuned, Uber was in a position where they were able to master value with respect to their consumer. And as we can see right here in the numbers, it also maximized their revenue, not just 1 year, but year over year. When you're talking about a $17 billion company to have achieved 51% increase year over year, that is significant. I mean, significant might be an understatement, right? We're talking about billions of dollars from 1 year to from one date rather to 365 days later. This is a prime example and case study, if you will, for the value proposition for mastering value. And so with that said, let me jump into an actual case study. We'll work through this one together. I want to introduce you guys to a friend of mine, a fictitious friend, but a friend nonetheless. This is Jim. Jim is 46. He has a wife and 3 kids, aged 10, 8, and 3. He works in accounting at a major Fortune 500 corporation. And in this picture, he is hiking across the desert. Current temps are around 100 degrees. And in his backpack, he has a pack of Slim Jims, a pack of chips, 2 bags of chips rather, and a pack of wet wipes. That's all that's in the book bag that he has. I want to ask the group, and I know we've had a couple more people sign in, so I want to get some new people, if you will, to give their perspective. When you, given the context that I've provided, what do you all believe Jim values? What is most worthy to him in this specific moment as he's hiking across the desert? Jennifer, what do you think?
Survival.
Survival.
Getting through the desert.
Absolutely. That's a good one. Kai, what about you? What do you think? What does Jim value right now? What is most worthy to him in this specific situation?
If he has wet wipes, probably being clean, having fun while he's hiking.
Yeah. So let me give you a slightly different scenario. So I mentioned to you all that Jim has a wife and 3 kids. What if I told you that his wife and 3 kids were 5 miles down the road, sitting in a car that was stranded because they ran out of gas? How does that context change your perspective? I'm going to go back to the same people that initially answered. So, Jennifer, I think your initial take was survival. But given the additional context, what do you think value looks like to Jim in this situation?
Keeping his family safe, getting help.
Right. Getting help, keeping his family safe. Kai, what about you?
Getting gas or getting help or getting back with help. One of the
Got you.
two.
Got you. Charlene, I think I've given you some context. You want to jump in here? What do you think Jim is most concerned about now?
Getting the gas and getting back to his family.
Absolutely. So you see right here in this picture how, with the right context, again, thinking about how close we are in understanding our customers' needs, that then helps us to define what value looks like to Jim. When he was just a guy in the desert walking around with wet wipes, we thought value might mean that he wants to be clean, right? Or he's just trying to survive the heat. But with the full context of what's happening beyond the dimensions of this picture, we were able to shift and be a little more clear on what value actually means to Jim. Yes, Jim is looking to survive, but he's looking to survive so that he can get gas and save his family from sitting in the car in their desert heat. So the point here is that we've got to start seeing our customers or our stakeholders or our communities, the people that we serve. We've got to start seeing our people in 5D, right? Obviously, we live in a three-dimensional world, right? And some people may argue we've got 4D going on now with augmented reality, so on and so forth. But we've got to start seeing our customers in 5D. And so what that means is I want to introduce you guys again to a framework that I believe will transform the way that you relate, not just to your professional networking, your customers and your stakeholders and your teams, but truly now leaning into how do we assess value with respect to the people that we're interacting with and serving in a way that, again, masters value so that we can maximize revenue and or impact. And so the 5 dimensions are destination, drivers, detours, accelerators, and roadblocks. I'll run those one more time. The 5 dimensions of value are destination, drivers, detours, accelerators, and roadblocks. So let's talk about destination for a bit. Destination is very simple. Where is your customer, community member, and or stakeholder? Where are they trying to go? So when you think about destination, right, and we can use Jim and stick with him as an example. When we think about destination, the question that I asked you all was, what's valuable to Jim, but understanding where he was trying to go and what he was trying to achieve really changed our answers in the way that we approached a response to that question. Question that you want to consider when you're wanting to assess this dimension of value, destination, is how does my customer spend their free time? How does my customer spend their money? What problems is my customer trying to solve? What's a day in the life of my customer like, right? The reason that we want to consider and sit with those questions is because, again, the more context that we have and understanding our customers' desires, the more equipped we are to actually create value. And so now that we understand that Jim is not just hiking the desert for thrill and adventure, he's hiking the desert to get to the gas station so that he can get back to his family. That is an idea of really being at the crux and the core of understanding what his customer need is. These other questions that we have on the screen really just kind of provide contextual information that supports why that destination is important. And so, with that said, let's jump to the second dimension, drivers. Why does my customer want to arrive at that destination? So if we go back to Jim, he wants to arrive at that destination not just for his own survival. He's not trying to get to the gas station for him. He's trying to get to the gas station to save his family. So the questions to consider when you're looking to assess drivers: what are my customers' convictions? What are my customers' personal values? What has my customer had to overcome, right? So when we think about Jim as a husband, as a father, their livelihood, their existence is extremely important to him. We're talking about his life partner, his children. Those are his customers, and he is convicted by the fact that he wasn't paying attention to the gas needle, and now they're in a precarious situation. So from a personal value standpoint, as a husband, as a father, he's going to do whatever he has to do to get to that gas and make sure that his family is straight. And so when you think about drivers, understanding the why behind the where really, really changes the game. And when we think about what it means to assess, identify, and understand our customers' actual needs. If I'm thinking about the 5 dimensions, I would say that this is probably one of the most important ones. A customer will tell you anything about where they want to be, but when you understand the why behind it, now you've got the gold. Detours. So we understand, one, where they want to go. We understand why they want to get there. This third dimension really gets into distractions, right? What might distract my customer from reaching their destination? So now we're dealing with the individual. We're dealing with the person. We're dealing with the humanity of the people that we're serving. And we're wanting to understand, what is my customer's personal history? Right? What are things that they are historically challenged by? What are hurdles that they've had to overcome in the past that might trip them up if they were to encounter them again? What type of lifestyle does my customer lead? Right? What has my customer had to overcome? Let's take it back to Jim for a second, right? So when we think about lifestyle, if Jim is a heavy drinker, he might get dehydrated a whole lot quicker than someone who isn't, right? Because we understand the role that alcohol can play within our bodies. No shade to alcohol. I'm just saying it is what it is, right? So when we think about, again, what that value looks like and what might deter Jim, it's understanding, like, okay, dehydration might be a real thing for him because Jim was at the bar getting slapped just the night before. So understanding again, like what might distract that customer from arriving at their destination is important, because now we can be more intentional about what we offer with the objective of creating value. Personal history. Some of this has to do with the way that my brain works, but I think that it's also just, the way that the world operates is that more often than not, history repeats itself. Another way to say that is that we can typically lean into historical data trends to predict or make some assumptions around what the future may hold. And so when we're looking at what it means to create value for a customer, and when we're thinking about crafting solutions, crafting services, crafting offerings, the thing that we want to uh, discern and really consider is, how can we help this customer to avoid detours, right? How can we insulate this customer and this stakeholder to ensure that they are best positioned and postured for success based on the destination that they define, right? Because the goal for us as a service provider, as a community organization, as a healthcare agency, whatever the case may be, we're trying to help them get to the destination. Our ability to help them avoid detours not only serves their purpose, but it serves ours as well. The fourth dimension I want to talk about is accelerators, right? So we've covered destination, where they want to go. We covered detours, drivers, why they want to get there. Detours, what distractions might keep them from arriving at that destination. On the flip side, accelerators are what will help them get there faster, right? Because here's the thing, we live in a world now, I tell people this all the time. I want everybody on the call to remember this simple fact. Wave goodbye to the information age. We are rapidly exiting the information age. Access to information has become democratized, right? Information is a commodity now. With the advent of AI and its integration into many of the tools that we use day to day, everybody has access to the same information. what I want you all to do is welcome yourselves to the experience age, right? Because now when we think about customers, what they're wanting to achieve, where they're trying to go, and what differentiates their or what influences their decision to go with one service provider, one organization, partner with one community agency versus another, the impetus, or excuse me, the emphasis on value is even greater now, because it's not about who has the information that can help me get to where I'm going, because everybody has that information now. Now it's about what experience can this person or this agency, this company, this organization create that will allow me to arrive at my destination, not just arrive at my destination, but help me to arrive there whole, happy. It's about doubling down on value in a way that again goes beyond just helping them to check the box. And so when we think about accelerators, we're talking about speed. That is a part of that experience. Your ability to help your customer, your stakeholder arrive at their destination more quickly is one way to differentiate yourself from the competition. And so when we think about accelerators, the questions that we want to consider are, what does my customer do really well, right? To the degree that we can leverage what we know about the customer, specifically their strengths, to help them get where they want to go more quickly, that's something that we can leverage. That's a no-brainer. What are my customers' favorite tools or devices? So what are the things that are already a part of their life experience that we can leverage or meet them at to, again, help them get to that destination in a more quick fashion? It's a much heavier lift to have to educate before you provide a service versus tapping into an audience that's already informed and that's primed and ready to go. They're just waiting on the right solution to fall through the cracks. Those are two totally different things, especially with respect to speed. What self-truths might my customer deny? So this is how we get back to, this kind of ties into Detours a bit, because oftentimes your customer is not willing to admit or may not even see the very things that are holding them back and keeping them from arriving at the destination that they're seeking. And so as a service provider, as a community-based organization, as a business, your job is to illuminate those self-truths in a way and then eradicate them, right? How do we illuminate, eradicate? How do we bring light to them and get them out of the way? Because that in and of itself is an accelerator, right? What accepts my customer the most? Same concept, right? By understanding our customer and what triggers them, we can speak to that in a way and design and craft services, offerings in a way that circumnavigate the things that might trip them up. What is my customer's worldview, right? So understanding how they view the world that we live in, what matters most to them, what values do they have, and as best you can, where it makes sense, where it's authentic, aligning yourselves with that in a way that helps them to engage in a completely different way. So these are all just questions that you may consider when you think about accelerators. When you go back to Jim and we think about what are my customers' favorite tools or devices, if Jim is an avid, smartphone user, right? Or he's a retired network engineer, that is an example that gives us some information and insight around how we might be able to leverage what he has in his bag to help him get to where he wants to go more quickly. Or perhaps Jim is a very fit guy, right? And he's a runner. So when we think about what value might look like to Jim in the desert, maybe it's about making sure that he has an extra pair of shoes in his bag that will help him to run, because he's a trained, athlete. These are the kinds of things that, again, give us the context that we need to be more intentional and targeted with what we offer. The last dimension of value that I want to cover is roadblocks. And so when we think about roadblocks, these are the things that would stop our customer dead in their tracks, right? Questions to consider here are, what economic forces are currently in play? What type of environment does my customer exist in? Is my customer the actual final decision maker? I'll start from the bottom and work my way up. So an example of a roadblock is if you're engaging someone that you believe is a potential customer or a prospective customer, but they're not the person who is actually making the decision, you might be wasting your time. You might be speaking to someone, giving them all the information, exciting them about the destination, the drivers, the detours, and how you're going to help them avoid them. But if you're not talking to the person and you haven't directly influenced the mind of the actual decision maker, that might be considered to be a roadblock. When you think about the environment that they exist in, right? The difference between detours and roadblocks, detours are internal, right? Because both things can stop somebody from getting to the destination. The difference is the detour is a distraction, right? So what noise or nuisances exist within the environment of my customer that I need to account for? That is a detour. A roadblock is external, right? So if our current administration releases an executive order that stops all activity in a certain lane, suddenly my customer is unable to do what they need to do to get to their destination because the services that they currently offer are no longer legal. That's an example of not only the type of environment that they exist in, but also the external forces that are currently in play. And so, excuse me, so these are, again, the 5 dimensions of value that we want to consider when we're trying to not just define, but really design what I'll call the value proposition for our respective customers and or stakeholders. The reality is that that value proposition really sits at the center of those 5 dimensions. And they're almost like forces, right? They're all pulling in different directions, but to the degree that we can really land and nail the center of those 5 dimensions, giving credibility and credence to each of them, that will help us to really nail and determine what the value proposition is for that respective customer. And so let's go back to Jim, and I want to engage the group again. When we think about Jim, now that we have the full context, we know where he's going. We know why it matters to him. We know what detours might exist for Jim. We have an idea of what might help him get there faster, but he's in the desert. So there are also some external things that he has no control over that, if not accounted for or mitigated, might stop him from getting to that gas station. I'm going to go back to the group. Jennifer, Kai, Charlene, I'd love to hear from you all. Based on your understanding now of the 5 dimensions of value, I want you all to apply them. And I'm going to ask the same question again. How can we create value for Jim given his current situation? Jennifer, I'll start with you.
There's a lot of external factors for Jim in this situation. I think that his background of I think he was an accountant maybe. And so this is potentially a little out of place for him.
Wheelhouse.
And so, it's what does he have? What tools does he have at his disposal to actually execute and get there safely? So I feel like trying to deal with the detour, I'm not sure exactly how to handle that given his situation. But I feel like the roadblocks, the detours are kind of at play here.
No, they absolutely are. And so I think, let me ask you a quick follow-up question. Actually, I'll hold my follow-up question. Let me ask Kai what his thoughts are. Kai, based on what you understand now about Jim in terms of his full context and what he is existing in, where he's trying to go, why it matters to him, so on and so forth, what do you think would be valuable to Jim given his current situation?
I think he's not necessarily the best person for the job. He's not trained in, walking in the desert for long periods of time or this.
Right.
So I think some help. I think he needs help. And I don't know if he has cell service, but a phone or something to call someone, even just Google where he needs to be.
Yep. So let's get creative for a minute. We've got a little bit of time here. Before we wrap up, I love to let's do some product development, if you will. So both Jennifer and Kai, you both mentioned or alluded to the fact that Jim might not be the right person for the job, right? He's ill-equipped. He's got a book bag with some snacks in there and a pack of wet wipes. And he's trying to get 5 miles down the road to the gas station to get gas to essentially save his family and get them out of the desert. He's an accountant. He's 46 years old. He likes, to take a sip on the weekends, and he actually just had a pretty fun night the night before. So, and he doesn't have any water in his book bag, with the exception of wet wipes. So, help is what he needs. Absolutely. Here's the question I'm giving you all of that context because I want to ask the question in a different way. What would you offer Jim that might help him to arrive at his destination, avoiding detours, breaking through roadblocks? Yeah, I'd love to get you all's take. What might help Jim? No wrong answers.
Yeah, self-awareness that
He
he's
says,
capable.
sure.
Because I think that I think that the image is throwing, my mindset a little bit. But if the
Sure.
discussion began at the car, right? The only discussion, and those are the things that you have.
Right.
You're capable. You're capable because you've gotten to where you've gotten to be 46. The liquor,
Right.
all of those other things, because the most important thing for me, for him, would be to stay in the moment. Stay in the moment. What are you trying to do?
Yeah.
And then even looking at his supplies, the wet wipes, hey, if that's what you got, how can you use the wet wipes to get you 5 miles down the road?
Right.
Right. You don't have water, but 5 miles, you might be able to make it without the water. So I think the most important thing in this instance is self-awareness, what you're capable of doing. Not that, I would encourage him just to stay in the moment. Let's get the job done. You know what you've accomplished before. You know who your children are. You know what they're capable of. But it's you. This is on you. And 5 miles, if you're walking across that's a whole nother story. But if we're going down the road, that's different story. So it's the image.
For sure. Yeah.
Yes.
Context is everything. Thank you, Charlene. Kai, what about you, man? What do you think Jim, what would you offer Jim that would create value for him given the situation?
I think in terms of just survival, offering him water would be the most help.
Sure.
5 miles is a long way to go without water,
Right.
especially if it's hot out. In terms of like getting where he needs to be, probably a phone to, see the fastest route. So he's not walking any more than he needs to.
Yeah, for sure.
But if he had the phone, why would he have to walk?
Great question. No, I mean, there are no wrong answers. We are.
And maybe it's, yeah.
See, Charlene, I got you going now. The wheel's turning. Roxanne, what about you? What's your take? What would you offer Jim that would create value for him given his situation?
Gas.
Gas.
What he ultimately needs, I'd offer him gas.
Yeah, gas. So let me throw this one in the pot for you for your consideration. What about a helicopter? Right? Like Jim's got I said 5 miles, but in actuality, he's got 10 miles to go because he's got to get to the gas station, which is 5 miles down the road, and then make it 5 miles back. So when you think about that in the context of 100-degree temps, that might be some wet wipes and maybe even water may not be enough to suffice what Jim's actual needs
gas
are.
station, you get a ride back.
You could there's
you
that option as well.
Gas station, you made it to the world.
There's that option as well.
I mean.
But then there's also what about if Jim had a pack of flares in his book bag, right? Like there's so many different ways based on what we've talked about that we can create value for Jim based on what we know. But leveraging the 5 dimensions and really making sure that we're crystal clear on all of the different forces that are in play allow us to be more intentional, right? If we stick with the helicopter idea, let's say now he has that phone and for and Uber really got fancy and added helicopters to their fleet of vehicles. Assuming he has signal, Jim might be able to, request an emergency helicopter ride through Uber. I'm saying this, but we don't know. This might be coming down the pike. But I'm giving you an example of how, boom, he's going to get to the gas station super quick, right? Not only is he going to get there quickly, he's going to get back to his family fast as well. Charlene, you mentioned him getting a ride. There's no better ride than a helicopter when you're in an emergency situation. And that's debatable, but yeah, helicopter. So, so like when we think about again those 5 dimensions, roadblocks, potential roadblocks when you're in the desert could be um, animals, right? If he gets bit by a scorpion or a pack of coyotes chases him down or comes across his path, that's something that might stop him from moving forward. But if you're thousands of feet in the air, boom, that roadblock is no longer an issue. Detours, right? When we talked about the internal pieces of making sure that he has what he needs or that he's, managing and accounting for the internal distractions that might take him away from where he needs to go. Anybody who's hopped in an Uber before, I'm sure you've hopped in one that might have had a bottle of water in the back seat because they were trying to be hospitable. So imagine if he gets in that helicopter, this emergency service, and they have an IV drip available to him, right? As part of this emergency package that they offer for people who are in distress. This is an example of how you can, again, craft a product, a service, or an offer in a way that's so specific, so niche, and that speaks to all of those dimensions in a way where it becomes a no-brainer, right? And so now you've mastered value with respect to that particular customer with the objective of, again, maximizing revenue and muting the competition. And so, given that, I think we've covered quite a bit, right, in terms of what value looks like. And so the conversation now goes to, well, Bobby, what's next, right? Where do we go from here? For those who are already in business, here's what I want you all to consider. I want you to, or business or in any aspect of service, right? When I say customer, I'm not just talking about people that you exchange monetary currency with. We're talking about anyone that you create value for or that is a stakeholder on the receiving end of something that you're offering. If you're a parent, that might be your child. Your child is your customer, right? If you are an executive director of a nonprofit, there might be a specific audience or community that you're serving. If you are a business owner, you probably have clients and or customers that you're actively serving or that you're seeking. And so what I want you all to consider is, or reconsider rather, is what value might mean to them leveraging the 5D model. Take a hard, earnest look at your products, your services, and how you position them to ensure that you've taken into account all of the different things, right? The destination, where they're trying to go, the drivers, why does it matter to them that they get there? The detours, what distractions might take them off course? Accelerators, how do I get them there faster? And roadblocks, what external forces that they have no control over can we mitigate and account for to ensure that they are able to arrive at their destination in the quickest, most efficient fashion? You may have to unwind some things. You may have to shift some resources. You may have to transform the way that you function. But I can assure you that leveraging the 5D model, you will be transforming things for the better. And so with that said, I want you all to consider this last thing, and then I'll turn it over to Avilis for questions. The only place that change comes before clarity is in the dictionary. And so when we think about the work that we do and the interactions that we have and the places that we show up in the relationships that we're managing and navigating with the intent and with the heart of service, understand that clarity plays a very key role in that. And I believe that leveraging this 5D model is one way to make sure that you have absolute crystal clarity on what value means to your customer by one, mastering and understanding their deepest and most concerning needs, developing and crafting products or services to meet those needs in a way that masters value so that your organization can maximize revenue and or impact. So my call to action is very simple for those who are on the line. That QR code is a link to my LinkedIn profile. I would love to invite you to join me as I journey. I share content on LinkedIn and other social platforms that really speak not just about value proposition, but several other concepts that I believe are key to business growth and transformation. And so with that said, I will turn it over to Ivelisse. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much, Bobby. I'm sitting here with like notes and paper. This was so informative. I do
Thank
want to
you.
open it up to anyone who has questions, so feel free to put them in the chat or come off mute. I did want to note, out the gate, you mentioned that we're moving away from the information age to the experience age.
Yes.
All the things that you're talking about, things that I noted, right? So we're talking about value and your friend, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to, if you can talk a little bit more about how you see that experience age kind of showing up kind of in the day to day, any insight that you have there, or how we're experiencing that in
Sure.
like real life, examples.
I think experience is just a natural part of our existence, right? It literally is the um, amalgam of moments in our lives, right? A moment is literally every breath that we take. Our existence is the culmination of all of those moments over the course of time. And so existence has always been in play. But from an economic perspective or from a business perspective, what we have seen over the last several years is that information really is what helped to set people, information and or access to information is really what set one business from aside from another, right? To the degree that I have access to insight, now I can be more intentional and differentiate myself from somebody else who's providing a similar product or service. So when you take into account now AI and all the things that are associated with it, information is no longer a differentiator. Is no longer, a strategic lever because everybody has access to the same things. And so when we think about now, it's like, how do we leverage that information to create an experience or either create an experience or transform the way that people experience day-to-day life, right? So how are we transforming and changing the moments that people have day in and day out through the things that we create and or offer? We've even seen it in marketing. I'm not sure how many of you are NBA fans, but if you've been watching the finals, you've likely seen the commercial from Airbnb. Airbnb is no longer marketing, hey, we've got this dope, repository of homes across the nation. They are marketing Airbnb experiences. If you Google it now, Airbnb experiences, you will see a completely different look at something that has now kind of been commoditized. Obviously, a home or access to a home is not information. But again, it's the same concept of we've got to go beyond the surface and really create an experience for our customers that is transformative.
Charlene, I see you here. Do you have a question?
No, not really. I agree with everything that's being said. I think that I worked with recovery and wellness. And one of the
Sure.
things that I like about AI, I don't have to be the smartest person in the room. I
Right.
encourage people, listen, I asked what do you already know? What do you want to know? And what have you learned? So based on that, if you have a phone, let's have the discussion based on the facts that are, that have already been put in the wheel. The other thing
Mm-hmm.
too, because you mentioned the guy in Washington, we've survived so much as a people. So I'm thinking with AI, we move the thing forward. We create new stuff.
That's
And
right.
and I like your presentation because that's what you're talking about. We're talking about wellness. We can't do that because it didn't work. It's not working that well. So let's try to expand it. So absolutely. any way you can encourage people to think for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think even as we get older, the thing is, man, you got to use AI and find the recipe that works for you.
Thank you, Monique.
I just really, Mr. Staten, just thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. You offer refreshment in terms of the information, but you also remind us of our power and what we're doing already. And Iblis, you know, I always thank you for the opportunity to engage with you. We've had some great collaborations and we're going to continue to move forward. I'm always curious about beginnings or origins. How did you cultivate and develop this step by step? That's my question this morning.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Thank you for that. I'll say this, I'm not saying this about you. I am a geek. I love origin stories too. Like, I'll watch documentaries and YouTube for fun. Like, that's my jazz, right? So I get it. So 5 dimensions of value is actually a framework that I came up as a part of my coaching accelerator. I have a coaching program that I do for entrepreneurs, business leaders, startup visionaries that's really focused on helping them to devise and design their business model. And one of the things that we talk about, I call them bricks, one of the bricks that we're laying and establishing that foundation is value proposition. And so 5 dimensions of value is just an excerpt from that place. Now, to answer your real question, how I came up with it, I had been introduced to a framework many, many years ago called the value proposition canvas. And in working through it, I was like, man, there's a lot of gaps here, right? Like the way that it's structured, the way that it kind of walks people through the idea of developing a value proposition. When I did it for my business, I was like, there's something missing here, right? So there was that. It was noticing that there was a gap, but then it was also really recapping and sitting with my existence as a business growth consultant and hearing from my customers and seeing in real time the challenges that they were having as they were trying to design products and services. And so I'm like, how do we one, bridge that gap, but then also how do we account for where our economy and the business landscape is heading? How do we account for those things in a way that helps us to be, laser focused, super intentional with how we meet and address the needs of our prospective customers? Because it's only going to get more and more difficult, and the barriers to entry are lowering. So now we've got more people coming into industry, providing and doing some of the same things. The person or the entity or the organization, whatever the case may be, that is closest to that customer and is able to master value for them is what's going to set them apart. So it's a combination of different things. And so I just had to think through, like, what is that customer trying to achieve? What does value look like to them? And how can we articulate that in a way that everybody would understand? And so through that process, came up with the 5 dimensions of value.
So it's the kindred, making sure that there's the match.
That's
but
right.
Also what I like is that there's clarity about let all be on their way if it's not, and be able to do that graciously as well. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
That's helpful.
Thank you for the question, Monique.
No else.
I've never been asked that, and I had to dig deep on that. I'm like, wait, what is the origin?
Oh, good.
Thank you all so much, Bobby. Thank you for your time, your
My pleasure.
wisdom, the tools. I think for everyone here, thank you for joining us in this moment. As you leave this session, you're not just equipped with, the strategies, right? But really you're equipped with like your own empowerment to trust yourself, to trust, right, the value that you create, and also like some good frameworks to think about how we move forward to create impact and value for the communities that we care about, that we work with, and that we join in this journey. I love that word, Monique, the kindred, right? The work.
Yeah, the kindred, for sure.
So the work starts now. It has
Don't
already
say
been
no.
happening. Community is here. So really just gratitude for everyone's time. Please, we have a survey in the chat. I'll put it in again. Share your thoughts with us, with Bobby. We'll share them with him as well. Anything we can do to make these better. We have a few series of these conversations. This was our first one. We have another one on June 23rd with Ken Miles from Harlem talking about innovation. So we'll share these with you. We're going to continue to have more programming. So thank you all for being here. What a beautiful way to kick off this Thursday. May you all have a great day. A lot of joy and light and love surround you in these times.